Having said all this, for whatever the reasons were, one or all the above, he decided to join up with the British and revolt against his leader, the Khalifa, and he was going to go and attack the Ottomans. Even though he's under them, right? And he's happy with that for a long time. And in return, the British promised them two things. We'll make you the next Khalifa, and not only will make you the next Khalifa, we'll make you a Khalifa of a united Arab land, which is like Palestine, Syria, Iraq, Iran, what's now Saudi Arabia, Yemen, like all of it. Arabia, Arab lands will all be under your control. He says yes. In October 24, 1915, there's something called the Hussein McMahon correspondence. So this is the actual document. This is the actual, it's not a copy, the actual document of it. And you can kind of read it. Basically it says that Great Britain agrees to support you in your fight for independence against the Ottomans. And we will, if you look, will guarantee the holy places against all external aggression and recognize their inviolability, blah, blah, blah. We'll give you their advice and lasting alliance, and which will be, and basically they're kind of saying, we'll help free you from Turkish oppression, and we'll give you your lands. That's basically what it says. So this is, you can read it yourself in their own words, not my words. So that's promise number one. Okay. And one of the things that the Arabs used to do is that the Arabs, the reasons why they wanted the Arabs to revolt was because you only have a certain amount of forces. So imagine we're an army here, right? And imagine one person comes through the door. We all jump on the person's the end of it, right? 5 people come through the door. Then maybe we can still take them. Now let's say 50 people come through the door. Now what happens? Now we have to split up and decide who's going to fight who, right? Because we're only limited in number. This is why the Allied powers wanted the Arabs to revolt, to split up the Ottoman forces. Not because they thought they were so amazing, they were amazing warriors. They just wanted to annoy the Turkish people and split up their forces so then they could attack other places and get rid of them. That's basically what they wanted to do. And I didn't mention it before. So before we get to Sykes-Picot, so this again, this is Lawrence of Arabia on the left. His role in it has been a little bit exaggerated, a little bit romanticized. There was a journalist who went to see during this time, and he wrote about it. And he noticed this one white man dressed in Arab clothing amongst the Arab tribes, and he was amazed by that. And he took a picture and he wrote about Lawrence of Arabia. So he definitely had a role to play, what level he was. There was a lot of controversy about him. But no matter what we think about him, the facts are he is an agent provocateur. He is a spy. This is historical fact. He is there instigating the Arabs to revolt against the Ottomans. This is a historical fact. And he was given £200 a month, basically to help support them. And what they would tell the Arabs was that, okay, take your army and attack that railway and attack there, and they would give them weapons. So the Arabs were like, okay, just like yes men, go here, go there, and they would just do whatever the British told them to do. Again, historical fact. I'm not trying to insult them or anything, it's a historical fact. They followed the orders that T. Lawrence gave them. Now, the next agreement is the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Okay, this is in 1915. So the first one is 1916. So the first one was 1915. So this is the next one, the year after that. Now, the war ended in 1918. So 2 years before this, look how forward-thinking they are. Okay? The Allies came together and said, if we win the war, how are we going to divide up the pie? This is before the war. You have to understand the planning involved. Before the war is over. This is something that we can learn. We need to. When did Sayyidina Nuh build the ark? Before the flood or after the flood? Before the flood, right? Planning. So this is, you can see, they're planning before. And they decide they're going to divide up the lands. France gets this, England gets that, and we'll talk about a second what it is. Russia wanted Turkey. Okay, because I mentioned the reasons why Russia wanted Turkey. And also because they were also pro-Armenian. And there were a lot of Armenians in Turkey, and Armenians are basically Orthodox Christians, Russians are Orthodox Christians, common culture, common language, common religion, so they wanted that as well. France wanted Lebanon and Syria, and the British wanted Iraq, Hejaz, and Jordan. Transjordan, which includes Palestine. There's hadith in Sahih Bukhari that says that there will be a time that the nations will come and eat from you like people eat from a common plate. And this is exactly what they're actually deciding how to divide the pie up. And this is, we'll see at the end of the war, this is pretty much how it gets divided up as they decide in Sykes-Picot. So if you look at this map, I just want to show you something, okay? Sykes and Picot, those are the names of two people, a French person and a British person. Sir Henry Sykes and Sir Mark Picot, I think. Look at this map. Look at the line that's drawn here. It's like a straight line, okay? Real borders aren't straight lines like that. They're rivers or mountains, or there's some natural phenomenon which is occurring, which is not always straight. It could be curved, it could be different. Nature doesn't go just in a straight line necessarily. But they divided it up in a straight line. And this is partly why they did this, because they cleave through, even if there's like a people there, they cut the map through through the middle of it, rather than having so people would be divided. And partly they did this on purpose because they wanted to divide people. They actually bragged that they made the Middle East on a map over tea during lunchtime. One afternoon, they just decided, you get this, you get that, and that's it. And this is historical line. So these are arbitrary lines that still define the modern Middle East. That's what I want to emphasize. They're arbitrary. They're not based upon people living here and other people beside them. They're just completely arbitrary. Sykes and Picot never went to the Middle East. They didn't speak Arabic. They knew nothing about the lands or the culture or the people. So they decided to do this anyways. Now, this was a secret agreement amongst the Allies. Now, if this is secret, how did we find out about this? Something else happened. Remember, Russia was part of the Allied powers? Russia had their own revolution, kind of independent of this. And during the Russian Revolution, when they had an empire, like czars and things like that, when they were overthrown, they found these secret documents. And they publicly displayed them and said, look how double-dealing your own king was, and dealing behind your back. And this was published in the New York Times in 1917. So this is how we found out about it, because they wanted to show the corruption of the czars. So that's why. So once the Arabs found out, they're like, hey, wait a minute, you told us that we can get United Arab Lands, and now I see you behind our backs, you're making a secret agreement. And then they come and they say, no, it's okay, don't worry about it. After the war, we'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. It doesn't mean anything. And the Arabs believed them. Okay, and they went along with it. And again, this is historical fact. Okay. Now, there's a third agreement. Okay? And to understand this, we need to understand Zionism. Zionism began in the late 1800s in Europe. It was a movement started by educated Jews who wanted a Jewish homeland because of how they're being treated in Europe. Okay? To give you an example, and there's some debate about whether this is the founder of Zionism, Theodor Herzl, which is like their primary thinker. In Europe, they were treated very badly historically. This is a documented fact. There was somebody he was one of the highest ranking officers in France, an army officer. His name was Dreyfus, Richard Dreyfus. He was one of the highest ranking officers. He was Jewish. His own soldiers and officers were so jealous and upset at the fact that a Jewish person had gone so high in the ranks of the army. They basically made a conspiracy against him, and they accused him of treason. And they made up evidence. And he was taken to court, was accused of treason, and put in jail. Okay? For years, eventually he was freed when they realized it was complete bogus. So he was a loyal soldier to the French, very intelligent, high-ranking officer. Everything was made up by people who were jealous of him and hated him just because he was Jewish. There's some evidence to suggest that after that point in time, Theodor Herzl, he realized that we need our own homeland. Jews cannot stay in Europe. If we stay in Europe and we try to assimilate, this is what happens. Because Jewish people initially in Europe, they used to stay in their own places. They used to call them ghettos. Right? So let's be in the land but live our own way. And then they would be attacked, and like if you read the Merchant of Venice by Shakespeare, it's basically condemning them, okay, for that. So then they decided, okay, let's integrate with people, assimilate with people. We'll be just like them. And when they did that, things like the Dreyfus Affair happened, which made them realize even if we try to integrate ourselves, we'll still never be accepted. So what's the solution? We need our own homeland. Okay. Now this is, and honestly, this is my own editorial point of view, so take it with a grain of salt. I think this is a very noble endeavor. I think any Muslim can understand the fact that to live your life and practice it according to your laws in peace is a very honorable thing. And honestly, under different circumstances, I would support them. But the problem is that they went somewhere where other people were living. And that's a problem. They forced other people out to come in. And other than that, I would personally support them, honestly, because that makes complete sense to me. Have your own homeland, live your life according to your laws in peace, and not having to be harassed, all these like racist people and things like this. But initially, they were offered Uganda, they were offered Argentina. They said no, 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 no. They insisted on Jerusalem. Okay? Now the question is, why did the Allied, and specifically the British, support the Zionists? Okay, so we're talking about Zionism now, right? But why did the British support them? They supported them because of three reasons. Possibly more, but this is my understanding, right? These are not controversial. These are obvious, historically documented. Anything after that is conspiracy theory. So it might be true. I don't know, but this is what I know. Number one, Jewish support. Like any power, like any community, you can lobby the government, right? So we just had the election a few months ago, right? So the Muslim community went and lobbied the liberal government. We'll vote for you if you do X, Y, and Z. Right? Get rid of the niqab ban. Help us build masjids. Blah blah blah. So and everybody has a right to do that, right? So maybe the Chinese community went and they said, no, we want more control over this and blah blah blah, and that's totally fine and legal to do, and nothing wrong with that. So the politicians wanted to get Jewish support. So there's nothing wrong with that. We all understand that we all have the ability to do that. Number one. Number two, this is something really important. There was a man called Chaim Weizmann, who later on became the first president of Israel. He was a chemist. And then again, talk a little bit about science and technology, how important it is, right? Like research and development and everything. He was a chemist. Very, very wealthy man. Basically like a millionaire / billionaire. He had developed a technique to make acetone. So you're like, what's the big deal? What's for acetone? Remember, this is a world war. There's 17 million soldiers fighting in this war. One of the things soldiers need, the primary thing they need weapons. They need guns. They need bombs, right? Otherwise, how are you going to fight anybody? Acetone was the primary ingredient to make cordite. And cordite was used to make bombs. So, and to get acetone naturally was very difficult. And natural acetone was running out. We used to take it from like excavated out of mines and like trees and things like that. So he developed a way to synthetically develop acetone. The British went and they came to him and they said, listen, give us acetone, make it manufacture for us, and we'll pay you or take care of you. So before, because the Germans were probably thinking, let's get him on our side, right? And blah, blah, blah. But he joined the British because they wanted the ability to make bombs. And then, but remember, Chaim Weizmann is a very rich man. He's already a billionaire. What can you give a billionaire money? He said, no, I don't want money. He said, give me one thing in return. What is that? Palestine. All I want is Palestine. I don't want anything else. I don't want your money. I'll make the acetone for you to fight the war. Just give me Palestine. Okay, so that's another reason why he joined the war. And the last reason is there was a strong Christian connection with the state of Israel, with Palestine. So a lot of evangelical Christians were like Lloyd George, this is a historical fact, who was at that point the Prime Minister of England, was basically a very staunch evangelical Christian. And they believe that the Messiah will not come until Jews get their homeland back. So these are three reasons why the British supported the Zionist effort. Otherwise, like, why would they care about them? Right? Everybody has something to say, but these are three reasons. And I think number two is probably the biggest reason, personally. The fact that he can make acetone, why they supported him. They made a document in 1917 called the Balfour Declaration, and this is the original document. That is Mr. Henry Balfour. Basically, he's writing a letter to Lord Rothschild, who is basically he is the richest. And the Rothschild is an amazing family, banking family. He's basically how can I say this? The most powerful Jew in Europe, basically. So he's writing him a letter and basically saying that in return for your help, we will be sympathetic to a Jewish homeland in Palestine in 1917.
The Rothschild actually basically owned all the banks.
Yeah, even now they're very wealthy. Back then they're even more wealthy. So this is why the letter was written to him, right? They needed some figurehead. Okay. So these are, again, but now there are three promises, right? Promise to the Arabs first, then the allied amongst themselves, they're going to divide up the lands, and now they promise Palestine to the Jews. So the same land has been promised to three different people. So something has to give, right? Something wrong. So you can see not just the double dealing, but the triple dealing that the Allied and the British are doing. So, but again, when the Arabs found out about this, they're like, hey, what about this? And sorry, the Balfour Declaration was not a secret. It was public. It was like published in the newspaper. So the Arabs said, hey, what, you told us this. Now you have Sykes-Picot. You're dividing up our lands yourselves, and now you're giving it to the Jews. And then they said, listen, it's okay, don't worry about it. Let's fight the war, we'll take care of you. And the Arabs believed them again. So again, so sometimes you have nobody to blame but yourself. You know what I mean? Like, what's that saying? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And that's the idea. Okay, so the war ends. We're almost done, inshallah. The war ends in 1918. So this is Remembrance Day, right? So the 11th hour of the 11th day of 1918. So this is the poppy that signifies the Remembrance Day. So I'm sure we all see people wearing them around that time. So this is that is to signify the end of World War I. So inshallah we'll be done in the next 5 minutes. So what are the consequences of the war? Number one, from a political point of view, empires are broken up. We mentioned that earlier on. Right? Empires that existed don't exist anymore. So the world changed. You can imagine if I'm from Quebec. So imagine Quebec separated from Canada. That would have major consequences about how Canada develops as a country and things of that sort. Right? So all these countries, all these empires broke up, and there are so many individual countries that resulted from that. So that is a major consequence of the war. Number two, in some countries, 20% of the male population of the country died in the war. 20%. 1 out of every 5. Think about that. Those are staggering numbers. The famine that resulted from the war killed 3 times as many people as that. So we're talking about 200 million people probably dying from the war, from the war and its consequences. You can imagine it's changing the way the world is working. Okay? And because of that, I put it after this, but we'll talk about this right now. Change in gender roles. So you can imagine if 1/5 of the male population of a country dies, now you have all these jobs that are available. Who's going to do that? The women.
Yeah.
They get the women involved. Like, those campaigns you see, like those posters, like you can do it, like the woman, the very famous one. They started to get the women involved into the workforce So they took women away from, again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, my opinion is irrelevant. The point is that historically, they took something which was historically the meaning of the home was the meaning of the woman. They took them and they put them as a society into the workforce. So this is like, so this changed the roles of the genders, and nowadays that's the way it is now, right? Good or bad is a separate issue. The point is the world changed because of that, and it led to the rise of feminism and women's rights and all these different things. So again, major shift in the world. And the number 3 thing here is the Spanish influenza. So does anyone remember a few years back there was a lot of talk about H1N1 virus, the bird flu virus? The original H1N1 virus is this, the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu was the worst plague since the Black Death. 5% of the world's population was estimated to have died because of the Spanish influenza. 5% of the whole world population died. You might know the people like in your own in countries back home who died mysteriously. They got the flu, and your grandparents or something like that. It probably could have been because of the Spanish flu. Now imagine all these soldiers are fighting under very modern sanitation is not there. They're fighting in very cramped quarters. There's not a lot of food. Immune system is weakened. The war ends. They go back to their homelands. So anything that they picked up, it's why I call the Spanish influenza. They noticed it first in Spain. When they go back to their countries, they're going to spread it. This is why so many people died, not just people in Europe, all around the world died. And the crazy thing about it is that it stopped on its own. No one knows what happened to it. It just stopped on its own. And that's why when you hear about things like SARS and what was the one they had last year? Ebola, swine flu. This is why you can say, oh, there's so much panic about it. Why are people making such a big deal about it? Because we know historically